Okay, welcome to the SAT math video. I'm Mr. Salerno, and this is part 1 of 3. We'll have 3 videos on this. And so there is a non-calculator section, and there is a calculator section. The non-calculator section is 20 questions, 25 minutes, and the majority of it is multiple choice, but there also is grid response on both sections. So for the calculator section, you should have the, down here, you should have a TI 84 plus. Even the TI-84 regular would work, but most kids have the TI-84 Plus, or you can have the the Silver Edition, for example. Some people have the Silver Edition, but you don't need anything. You don't need the TI-89. You don't need anything fancy like that. TI-84 Plus will be fine for you. Okay, and so again, like I said, the majority is, clear that out. Majority are multiple choice questions, but there is a grid response question. Here is the grid response. So for example, if I had the fraction here, you see the fraction of 8/15. So you would put the 8, you write an 8 there, you put the fraction bar, and then you have 15. And then just fill it in. This is like, when you did all those tests in school, you did those standardized tests, all since elementary, middle school, and high school, and you just fill it in. Right? And just make sure you're filling in the right bubbles. Don't rush this, because that's the Scantron there. So this is 8/15. You can also do it as a decimal. Clear that out. And so here's the decimal. You can fill in the decimal there. Let's say you had 0.5, and then just fill in the 5. Okay, so that's the grid response. Again, majority is multiple choice, but you will see some grid response. So we have heart of algebra. We have problem solving, data analysis, passport to algebra, advanced math, and additional topics. So for the heart of algebra, we're looking at inequalities, system of equations. There'll be a lot of system of equations, linear equations. For the problem-solving data analysis, we're looking at ratios and proportions and analyzing data. Passport to advanced math, we're looking at quadratics. That's an example, doing quadratic equations. And additional topics, you can see trig ratios, for example, and we'll handle all those in this video, in the videos that we're going to make. So for today, for this video, we're just going to concentrate on the non-calculator part of the test, and then the next videos we'll do the calculator part of the test. So non-calculator, we'll start with linear equations. You should know your linear equations. And the standard way it's written is y equals mx plus b, as I written right there. And the m, and this is in slope-intercept form. It's that way because we have the slope already. We can see the slope. The slope is m. That's the slope, or the rate of change. And the b is the y-intercept. And it's also called the initial phi, for example, in some word problems. The initial phi, or the start. It's where it's crossing the y-axis, the y-intercept. Good. So when we do word problems, we'll look at that. So for this example here, we can see we have a positive and a negative line. So right here is a negative line. We can see the slope right here is m. It's -1. -1 is the slope. And it's crossing the y-axis at 5. So even though it's negative, its y-intercept is 5. The b, that's the b of 5. And here the m is half, and the b is 2. So it's crossing at 2. You can see where it's crossing at 2. Okay. So let's form a linear equation. Let's say you had these two ordered pairs, and you had to form a linear equation. Well, you should know the change of y over the change of x, something you probably learned in middle school, the rise in 8th grade, 9th grade, the rise over the run. And the formula for that, if you remember, we'll bring it over here. So it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that will give us m, which is the slope. And so right here we have everything we need to get our slope. And we can start with any y. We can start with the 6 or the 0, whatever one you wish. So I'll start with the 6. So we have 6 minus 0. And if we're using 6, we have to use 3 for the x. We can't break apart the pair. And it'll be 3 minus 2. So then we're going to have 6 over 1, and the slope is 6. So we already have, the first equation, we have y equals 6x, and we're just looking for what a b is. Now to find b, we just plug in any pair. We can plug in this pair if we want, or we can plug in another pair. So instead of it being y now, we'll just say it's 0, because y is 0. So let's just erase that. And instead of being y, it's going to be 0. Instead of being x, it's going to be 2. Right? So it would be 0 is going to equal 6 times 2. Remember, parentheses is multiplication. So that gives us 12. So now we know that if we minus 12 on both sides, it'll be a negative 12. So the answer would be y equals 6x minus 12. Well, let's see if we're right. So if we make this 2, if we make the x 2, 6 times 2 is 12, and 12 minus 12 is 0, so that's correct. And if we make the x 3, that's 18. 18 minus 12 is 6, so this is correct. This is the linear equation in slope-intercept form. Okay. All right. So let's look at this equation right here. And it's given to you. The answer is already given to you. Let's get the pen back in. So we can see here that the slope is right there is m, and b is the y-intercept is 1. And we can see it's crossing right there. It's crossing the y-axis at 1. And from this 1, if we go up 1, 2, 3 over 1, right, we know that the slope is 3. It's the rate of change. It's going up 3 over 1, and it's doing that forever. So that's how we got that. And again, it's in slope-intercept form. There's also standard form, which we'll go over. And here's standard form. And as you can see in standard form, it's not so easy to see what is the y-intercept. So if we look over here, we need to get the y alone. We need to put this into slope-intercept form. So you should know how to do that, so you can answer these questions right here. Right. So let's do that. Let's bring the x out. It's a minus 3x, so we're going to have 2y equals, we're going to add on both sides, so that's how we get 3x minus 4. And then we have to divide the 2 out, right? And we're going to get y equals 3 over 2x minus 4. So we can see right away that the slope is positive. It has a positive slope. And the y-intercept is negative. The y-intercept is negative right there. And since it's negative, we know that the line is going down. We'll just make some arrows there in our linear equation. All right. Let's move on, clear this out. Okay. Now, perpendicular lines is very important about perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines have, write this down over here, they have the same two lines, lines that are perpendicular to each other, I should say, have the same slope. That's parallel lines, sorry. Parallel lines have the same slope, clear that out. Perpendicular lines have negative, the slopes will be negative reciprocals. Negative reciprocal. For example, let's say I had, again, parallel lines have the same slope, not perpendicular lines. So that's why you should always take your time. So if we had, let's say an equation y equals 2x plus 2, let's say we had that. The perpendicular line will have the negative slope, negative reciprocal slope, so it will be negative half. And we don't know what the y-intercept would be. We would have to figure that out, and we'll do that. So for another example, let's clear this out. Let's say we had y equals negative 1/5 x. So the line that's perpendicular to that line will just be 5x. So you would flip the fraction. If it's negative to start, it will be positive. If it's positive, it'll be negative. So these two lines will be perpendicular to each other if they're passing at a certain point. So you can see right here, let's say we had a line that was passing through that point. So let's make an equation. Let's say I had y equals 2x plus 1, just using 2x plus 1. What would be the equation of the perpendicular line to that passing through here? How would we do that? Well, first we want to create what we have. We have y equals, remember we have to do the negative reciprocal, so it's negative half x. Then we just have to find out what the y-intercept is. And we can do that by just simply plugging in 1 and 3. So remember, the 1 is the x. X comes first. So we're going to say 3 equals negative half times 1, which is just negative half, plus b. And then we have to add half on both sides to do our algebra. That crosses out. Whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So this is 3.5. So we can say that y equals negative half x. And you can say 3.5. Or you can say, we'll just write 3.5 over here, 7 over 2. Because 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So this equation, and sometimes it's best to put everything in improper fractions or make it, don't put them in mixed numbers. So this line right here, this line and this line, this line and this line is perpendicular to that line, and they will meet at 1, 3. Okay. So now let's talk about system of equations. Now with system of equations, you can do either the elimination method or the substitution method, whatever you think works for you. Let's do the elimination method first, and then I'll do one with the substitution method. So with the elimination method, right away here, we have to manipulate, because what we want the x's or the y, one of them, to have the same number, the same coefficient. So there's a 2 here, there's not a 2 there. There's a 3 at the y here, right? There's a 3 there, but there's no 3 there. So they need to have the same coefficient with different signs so we can eliminate them. Right, so if I write, we'll just write 2x plus 3y equals 12. And let's clear this out so I can show you. So let's do the bottom one. Let's manipulate that x minus y is 1. And it doesn't matter which one you manipulate, but sometimes you want to do the easier one. So I'm going to manipulate it by putting a negative 2. That's going to give me the same coefficient of 2 with different signs. And now we have to distribute. And we have to distribute it all the way, even the answer there. So this will be, the top number will be 2x plus 3y equals 12. But the bottom number will now be negative 2x. And then negative 2 times negative y will give us a positive answer. Remember, negative times a negative is a positive. And negative 2 times positive 1 is negative 2. Okay, and we'll just put a line here. Two lines here, getting a little crazy. Let's clear that out here. I'll erase this. All right. So now, as you can see, we can eliminate the 2, the x. The x is gone. And that gives us a y of 5. It gives us 5y, and 12 plus negative 2 is 10. So if we divide out the 5 on both sides, y is going to be 2. So we know what y is. Now we're just trying to find what x is. So you can take any equation to find that. Let's take the simplest one right there. We can say x minus 2 equals 1. So what minus 2 equals 1? 3. So y is 2, x is 3. Our solution is 3, 2. That is our solution. All right. Now let's look at this one. This one's a little different. It says here, when a is constant, so let's get the marker back up. When a is a constant, so it's a number. When a is a number, When does the system have no solutions? So before, when we were talking about perpendicular lines, and I accidentally said parallel lines, remember, parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. And if two equations have the same slope, then there's no solutions. Very important to remember. Same slope, parallel lines, there'll be no solutions. There can't be solutions because parallel lines, they never meet in our universe, right? Maybe they do in some other universe. So parallel lines never meet. So we know that if we put these in slope-intercept form, we know they should have the same slope. So let's take that. Let's take this equation first, and let's put it in slope-intercept form. That's what we should do first. So to do that, we need the y by itself, and what's in the way is this negative 3x is in the way. So I'm going to clear that out. Let's do this now. We'll say the y, and this is for the first equation, is going to be 3x, because we're adding 3x on both sides, plus 6. So we know right there the slope is 3. Slope is 3, so we'll just say that's the m, right? And the b, of course, the y-intercept is 6. So now let's try to do it on the other equation here. Do the same thing. Let's bring the ax out of there. So we're going to have 2y is going to equal a negative ax plus 4. It's negative ax because we had to subtract, because it's positive here, we had to subtract. And then we just divide the 2 to get the y alone. And so we're going to have y equals, so what we do have, we have a negative a over 2x plus 2. Because 4 divided by 2 is 2. So now, here's the thing. What could a be? So it'll give us 3. So what divided by 2 will give us 3? Remember, there's a negative here, so that's what you have to think about. So what do you think? Well, if I make a 6, it'll be, let's put it over here. It'll be negative 6 over 2, which is negative 3. But I don't want negative 3. Right? I don't want negative 3. I want 3. So I can't make a 6. So, but if I make a negative 6, it's a negative times a negative is a positive. So if I make a negative 6, then negative 6 wouldn't give us the 6. So 6 divided by 2 will give us 3. So we can't have a being negative 6. If it's negative 6, there'll be no solution to that equation. So again, just rewind the tape if you didn't understand that. The reason why is we had 2 negatives and 2 negatives. Remember, right over here, 2 negatives make a positive. And so 6 divided by 2 is 3. And remember, if they have the same slope, that'll give them the same slope. We don't care about the y-intercepts, by the way, because parallel lines will have different y-intercepts, remember? Different y-intercepts, just the same slope. And they never meet, therefore there's no solutions. Okay, let's clear that out. Move on. So let's see if you can try a question. Let's close this out for a minute. All right, see if you can do this question. Do elimination, and don't forget that there is a question at the end. Right here, it says, what is the value of 5x plus 5y? So let's try that. Now, with this one, you have to manipulate twice, because as you can see, they don't have the same numbers, they don't have the same coefficients, so you have to change both of them somehow so that they can have the same one. And whatever you want to use for that. So for the top one, let's say I want to make the x6. And you can choose what you want. So to make the x 6, and I can make the top negative or the bottom negative, doesn't matter. So let's say I say 3, and then I'll say 2x plus 3y equals 1200. Remember, I have to manipulate that. I have to multiply that whole thing. So on this one, you'll get 6x, because remember, we have to do the distributive property. So it'll be 6x plus 9y, and we're multiplying there, equals 3600. Right? And even though these are big numbers, you don't need a calculator for this. You should be able to multiply that. So we have our first equation. For the second one, let me get the eraser here. For the second equation, this one, in order for me to get a 6, I need to use a 2, but I need to have it as negative 2, because I need that negative 6. So I'm going to use negative 2 and manipulate this whole equation here, and we can bring it down here. So that'll give me negative 6x, and you can see we can eliminate the x right away. And then it'll be negative 2 times 2. That'll give us a negative 4y. And always double check when you don't have a calculator. You want to make sure that you're in your head or you're doing this correctly. And negative 2 times 1300 is going to give us a negative 2600. So let's write negative 2600 over here. Okay, so we can eliminate the x, and we're left with just the y there. So the y will be 5y. 9y plus negative 4y is 5y. And this will equal 1,000. 3,600 plus negative 2,600 is 1,000. So if we divide the 5 on both sides, we have what our y is. Our y is 200. There we go. So I'll just keep that up for 1 minute, and then I'll erase that. So we know the y is 200, so now we have to just plug in any equation we want, the top or the bottom, to figure out what is the x. What is the x? Okay, so let's clear that out. So we know the y is 200. And we'll bring that back in there. If the y is 200, we're going to have 3x, and 2 times 200 is 400, equals 1,300. And we just have to minus the 400 on both sides. And by the way, you could have done the top number too, whatever you think is easier. So that'll give us 3x equals 900. And always double check. You don't have a calculator. Remember, this is the non-calculated part. 9 plus 4 is 13, so you know that has to be 900. And so we'll just divide the 3 on both sides. And we know x is 300. X is 300. So we have our solution. Y is 200. X is 300. But that is not the question. The question was right here. What is the value of 5x plus 5y? So we just have to say 5 times 300 plus 5 times 200. And that will give us our answer, and that is 2,500. So right over here, 2,500 would be the answer. Okay. So that's part 1A. Let's go to part 1B video.